So breeding white birds from scratch is quite an adventure, to say the least. These three chicks are all siblings out of a first generation of making some white birds. And as you can see, they look nothing alike. Matter of fact, there's probably some other color variations out of those parents that I don't even have here in front of the camera, and that's because they're white-crested cuckoos or white-crested blacks, and I wasn't going to sort through my entire box of chicks just to find the ones that had the proper toe punches. But I'm going to show you these three here. Now, first of all, on the left, we've got this extremely dark chick, and if you zoom in on it, you can see that it is probably going to be some sort of gold. It's probably going to be not well laced, as dark as it is, but it clearly has some sort of red gold gene going on here. Now, it is the same age as the other two, but as you can see, it's much more small, and that is because there is Bantam genes in this bloodline. Now, the middle chick here looks like a white, at least at a glance, but if it turns around, and it was more noticeable when it first hatched, it has a black spot in the middle of its back. Now, to me, what that signifies is that this bird is a dominant white but only has one copy of white, so it's going to be leaky. Finally, we have this oddball here. Now, I've been guessing what it would be ever since it hatched, and it's going to continue to change. It's going to continue to perplex me. But it clearly has some sort of white-crested patterning going on, judging by the white on the head. But it is not the typical coloration of a white-crested cuckoo. And at first, I thought maybe it was going to be a silver Colombian, and in fact it might be. However, if you look at the wing... Oops, don't jump out, bud. If you look at the wing here, it almost looks like it's white-laced black, but then the flights look like it's starting to get some sort of barring on it. Now, as far as I know, there's no genetic way to make a white-laced black, so to me, this is just juvenile plumage that will change. Considering how light the leg color is on that chick, as well as this chick, I would say it is probably a good likelihood that both of these may have the barring gene. Whereas the dark chick obviously does not, because it has dark legs. Now here's that light colored chick again. There's that dark colored spot on its back. It's the only color on the whole bird. For comparison, I'm going to go grab a white-crested cuckoo to show you. Here's that little dark chick. So it's obviously some sort of melanized or something. Comparison, here's a couple of white-crested cuckoo chicks. We've got one that's darker here. And we've also got one that's lighter, much lighter. If I were to hazard a guess, I would say the lighter one's going to be a male. But here again, we've got, let's see, the smaller, darker chick is marked outside right. The larger, lighter chick is marked double left. So they're two different matings. And if I were to hazard a guess, I would say that the darker chick is out of my heterozygous barred male who has a little Bantam blood in him. and the lighter chick is out of my homozygous or double-barred cuckoo male, and that is what causes that. So side by side, you can see quite a bit of difference. Next, we're going to go outside and look at their parents and their grandparents. So this pair here is the parents of the chicks that I showed you inside. And to the untrained eye, they are white Polish. But that would be incorrect, and I refer to these as my fake whites. They are the start of what will become a line of whites, but they're not there yet. And this is part of why breeding anything that's white is so challenging, especially if you're starting from scratch. Because you don't know what all is going on with a white bird unless you know how it was bred and who bred it. Okay, so I've got the male first. Now, look at this male, you say, okay, well that's just a white male. But if you're familiar with the standard for Polish, you're going to notice his legs are the wrong color. Now, you might just say, well, he's got the white leg gene. But, if you look real close, these legs have little bits of color in them. Now, the only way you get that is the barring gene. Further, he's got that yellow tint to him, kind of that brassiness, and it's yellowing on the outer edges of the male feathers. Matter of fact, you look at these saddles, you can see that it's white in the center, that's just yellow elsewhere. And this feather here shows white or black specks on it. You can see that again in other parts of his plumage, if I can find it. Right here, the tail. So that tells me that what I'm dealing with is a bird that has at least one copy of the gold gene and at least one copy of dominant white. Now you combine that with these legs, and those legs tell me that he's barred. So what this tells me is this bird has at least one copy of barring and one copy of dominant white, which combined together give a mostly white bird. He's got a little red up here in the crest too. Right there. And you got another feather that's got that black leakage. Now the hen, so here again with this pullet, we've got black leakage right here. We've got colored, white colored shanks. We've got a little bit of yellowing up here in the hackle, which tells me she's probably got the gold gene. There's some black spots right there in the feathers as well. So this explains why we're getting such a variation in the chicks. It's because both of these birds, although they look the same, are impure for several different sets of genes. Now, their father was the same color as this male here. And I believed him to be a homozygous cuckoo, or a double cuckoo as some people call them. This is not their father, this is their half-brother, or cousin I should say. But their dad was colored just like him. You can see he's got a gold tint to him too. But I thought their father was a double-barred cuckoo based on his appearance. However, in breeding him, I determined that was not the case. Now, for comparison, this is a single-barred cuckoo male. You can see how much darker he is. So then, I took this cuckoo male and I bred it to a hen that was the color of these hens here. She's sunning herself. But what we have here are buff Colombians with one copy of dominant white. You can see it on this other hen over here in particular. Her neck has white ticking where the black marks in a Colombian should be. So that's what color their mother was. And in fact, believe it or not, these 4 birds here are full siblings to that white pair. Now, the mother of these birds, as I said, was a buff Colombian with dominant white markings. That bird came out of some buff lace Polish, so that explains why she was a red bird or a gold bird or a buff bird, take your pick, with dominant white markings. In her case, she just didn't get the genes for lacing. So since she didn't have it, I don't expect these white birds to have any lacing genes, and therefore I don't expect any of their offspring to have lacing genes. Matter of fact, this male here, who is closer to Bantam sized, if I can get a good shot of him. It's hard to film things when you got everything screwed onto the tripod. This male right here is the brother to the buff hen that produced those white birds. So that goes back to me mentioning about there being Bantam blood in there. What the deal is there is that several years ago I bred 2 Bantam buff lace males into my large fowl buff lace. And then I took the smallest birds from that and bred them back to each other. And then I took the smallest birds from that and bred them back to each other, trying to make a separate line of bantams. So, the buff Colombian hen, to recap, was made out of Bantam buff lace and large fowl buff lace, and she just simply didn't get the genes to be laced. Took her, bred her to a white-crested cuckoo, and as a result, I produced birds that on the surface appear white. If I want to make them into good whites, which I do, my plan, and the reason I paired them up, is to try to produce some females who are white with blue legs. I don't even care if they have leakage in the color of their feathers. Now, since only one parent was a cuckoo, that means that this male only has one gene for barring, which should mean that half of his daughters should not inherit any genes for barring, and therefore they should have blue legs. Now, if I am successful in producing some blue-legged, mostly white pullets, I will know that those pullets have dominant white, and then what I intend to do is to this white-crested black male. Now the reasons I'm doing this, number one, is to bring some size back into them and to help eliminate the Bantam genes from the gene pool. Number two, what I am doing is I am giving them more solid colored birds into the lineage, because all dominant white really wants to do is two things. It wants to take over your black feathers, and it wants to lighten your red feathers. So by using a white-crested black, I'm giving it what the white-crested cuckoo has already started, which is a solid colored black bird to build off of. Once I achieve that, I will have to start selecting for birds that do not have leakage and do not have red leakage, as well as any black leakage. So the black will be the first thing to cover and take over, because the only time you have black leakage is in heterozygous whites, where they only have one copy of dominant white. Once I start getting them with two copies of dominant white, that should go away. The red leakage, however, given that my cuckoos have a tendency to be brassy, and most white-crested blacks that I know of are based off of the gold gene, which is why you get red leakage in the hackles sometimes, that part's going to be a challenge. So what I may end up doing is, once I get them to where they're producing nothing but whites, even though they may be brassy, is I would put in silver lace or silver into the mix as well. So my final comment outside was that I would consider adding silver lace to the mix. And I thought maybe it'd be better if I were to write down this on paper. So the reason you would have silver is because it affects the ground color of the bird. And a silver-based bird is always going to be a cleaner, brighter white than a gold-laced bird. Those ones are always going to have that yellow tint in the males and a little bit of brassiness, and they just don't, they can look white until you stick them next to a bird that's silver-based. So to go back into the mix here, what we started off with is a white-crested cuckoo male, and this was bred to a buff Colombian with dominant white female, and that produced the fake whites. So the fake whites are one copy barring, one copy dominant white, at least one copy of the gold gene, maybe split for silver on the male, and they also have some of the white-crested genes. I say genes because I don't think anyone has really studied the white crest trait, and I know that when you cross it, you can get varying degrees of expression. So I believe there's more than one gene involved. So out of these fake whites, what I'm hoping for is a female that has no barring, at least one copy of dominant white. Be great if she had two. And of course, she'll have some of the white crested genes. And I'm going to take that bird and breed it to a white crested black male. And from there, what I'm after again is males and females both that have zero barring, because if their mother doesn't have it, they wouldn't get it, because obviously the white crested black male doesn't have it, and 1 to 2 copies of dominant white. And that would give me a white bird with blue legs, but I may still have issues with the brassiness. So then I'll take this and cross it to a silver lace, and from that we would get whites. I'd use a silver male, and out of these whites, the females would be silver pure. They would have one copy dominant white, probably some of the white crested genes, but you wouldn't be able to tell, and no barring. Once I have these, I'd breed them back to the silver, and from there I would get males who are also pure for silver with one copy dominant white. Once I have those males, I can then begin a breeding program here to set the family. And all I gotta really look for, aside from things like type and size, etc., is birds with no leakage and good strong leg color and free of any brassiness. Because the dominant white, even if the lacing genes stay in there, the dominant white is going to cover them up. However, being as how we're using a non-laced bird to a laced bird, those offspring shouldn't have all of the lacing genes to begin with, which means that through subsequent generations you could breed out the lacing genes. I just don't know if you would see a noticeable difference in the birds that still have the genes versus the birds that don't, so they'd be a completely white bird. But anyhow, that is why whites are such a pain to work with, because it can hide all sorts of different colors. I mean, I didn't even really talk about blue, but white can hide blue, and you don't know until you make your initial cross to a bird that has color what you're dealing with. So, there you go.